Hey everybody, and welcome to Breaking Biotech. Thank you all for being with me today. I'm excited to be back, and got an exciting show for number 50, and we're going to talk about omega-3s. And joining me today is Nathan Weinstein, who works at Aegis Capital. And for those who don't know, Aegis Capital is a full-service retail and institutional broker-dealer. They are in New York City, and they've been around since 1984. And Nathan Weinstein is the Director of Healthcare Equity Research. And in this role, he does research on a variety of biotech companies, as well as those in diagnostics, animal health, and am I missing anything else, Nathan?
I
Medical
think you nailed it. Yeah.
medical devices. That's another
Right.
one. He has a CFA and degrees in economics as well as English, and he's finishing up an MBA right now. And yeah, so I'm excited to have you on. You are the first guest, Nathan, on Breaking Biotech. So I'm excited about it and happy to talk about this topic, which is Acasti Pharma. And the reason why I'm excited about it is obviously I've done a number of videos on Amarin already, and Amarin is really kind of one piece of the whole omega-3 story. And Acasti fits in nice with their product, CaPre, which is DHA, EPA. So yeah, so thanks a lot for coming on the show, Nathan, and yeah, we'll get into it.
Hey, Matt, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be here. I've been a long-time listener to your podcast. I think you do a great job covering stories in great detail. And so it's really a pleasure to be on here talking about Acasti and the omega-3 space. And I think it's a timely opportunity to chat on the names given the upcoming catalysts in omega-3. And so I'm happy to take it from there.
Yeah, definitely. And so the first slide I have up here is it's got the picture of the body, and what we're talking about omega-3s. It has to do with atherosclerosis and the risk of major cardiovascular events. And so the whole premise of the omega-3 space is that increasing your dietary intake of omega-3 in some sorts of combinations, and some studies have been successful and some haven't, but you reduce your risk of these negative cardiovascular outcomes, right?
That's right. So in many ways, we're looking at a space that's in the early stages of a broader adoption as practitioners start to realize that there's CV outcomes benefit, not just triglyceride lowering. So there's a number of therapeutics. Some have been released into the market, and some are still in development. So we think it's the early innings, and it's a good space to keep tabs on, especially given and you've covered this before, what Amarin's done with its Reduce It trial, which I think opened up a lot of eyes as the benefits of an omega-3 treatment regimen.
Yeah, definitely. And this comes like, at the heels of a big space that started out with statins and then kind of moved into PCSK9 inhibitors, but we'll get into that a little bit later because you did mention Visipa and Amarin, and what kind of kicked off the omega-3 thing was the release of this CVOT that Amarin produced, which really showed that their EPA treatment Visipa was able to reduce major cardiovascular outcomes. And other studies have struggled to show that with their combination pills, but and combination between EPA and DHA is what I'm referring to. But Amarin was able to pull it off with EPA alone, and it does look like some DHAs aren't able to have an overall positive benefit when it comes to things like LDL-C, but Acasti's actually seems to. So before we do that, I'll just, in going through the slides, the scripts that I'm showing here, Amarin's total revenue from the anticipation of the label expansion has gone up quite a bit over the years, given that all the hype around the Reduce It study that came out later in 2018.
That's right. So actually, Amarin's had its product on the market, its product being Visipa, which is a pure EPA ethyl ester. That's been on the market for several years, and obviously revenues have been climbing even ahead of the Reduce It data because it showed such a nice job of lowering triglycerides. And as a result of that, there's been doctor and patient uptake and more market awareness. You may have even seen their commercials on
Yeah.
television. Concurrently, they've been building their sales force. They have a target of having 800-person sales force. And then keep in mind,
Right.
this is a one-product company. So it just further underpins the excitement that's growing around the omega-3 category. And earlier referencing EPA and DHA, these are different types of omega-3s, closely related. But one of the things that Amarin has in its Visipa is a pure ethyl ester EPA product, whereas most of the other omega-3s that are either in development or in the market are a mixture of EPA and DHA.
Mm-hmm.
So as a class effect, we want to see if a mixed EPA DHA can have the same CV outcomes benefit as the pure EPA has been shown to do with reduce it.
Right.
And that's where AstraZeneca's strength trial is going to come into play.
Yeah, so why don't you tell us a little bit about that? So the breakdown, actually, I'm going to skip to that slide. So I'm at the slide right now where it breaks down CaPre, Lavazza, Visipa, and Epanova. And so Lavazza and Epanova are both EPA DHA omega-3s, but they are ethyl ester or free fatty acid. CaPre, on the other hand, is a phospholipid free fatty acid EPA DHA omega-3. So there's something about the quality of those fatty acids, even though they might have the same double bonds in the right places, but there's something unique about CaPre, is that right, that allows it to either maintain or lower LDL-C?
That's exactly right. So the formulation matters. They're all a little bit different. One of the things that makes the composition or the formulation matter is the bioavailability. So when you have an ethyl ester, it turns out, and if you look at the Visipa label, it's recommended to be taken with a meal to increase its bioavailability and have the triglyceride lowering effect. Whereas with CaPre, some of the others, it may not necessarily be the case because of how you're getting it in the phospholipid formulation and or with free fatty acid. So you could even take it in a fasting state, which could be beneficial for patients where high-fat meals might be even contraindicated. So that's one of the benefits of CaPre, but it's not the only one. If we look right now, so I should give a little bit of context. CaPre is in its phase 3, which is going to be the pivotal trial. It's a 2-part trial. They're going on concurrently, Trilogy 1 and Trilogy 2. Those are going to read out top line in respectively December of this year and January of 2020. But if we wind back the clock to the phase 2 trials for CaPre, that's when we really saw what Acasti called its trifecta effect, where not only did it have benefit in terms of triglyceride lowering, but there were beneficial effects on the other lipid markers. So this same pill not only lowered patients' triglycerides, but it also lowered LDL, quote, bad cholesterol, and raised HDL, or what is called, quote, good cholesterol. So the fact that you could get that triple or trifecta effect from one pill is what's one of the exciting things about CaPre.
Right, and I'm looking at that slide now. I just pulled it up. So there's the Colt study that used 4 grams, and then trifecta study that used 2 or 1 grams. And with the 4 grams, that's what's been used in the Trilogy 1 and 2. Is that right?
That's right, and it's important that you noted that because the evolution of the omega-3 space has required people to kind of understand, and things we know now that maybe people didn't know in the past was it matters the amount of the dosage. So 4 grams was more efficacious generally than, say, 2 grams or lower. So you want to have that 4 gram based on the studies. And then also the baseline triglycerides that were included in the trials, that also matters. And to put it simply, the higher your TG count or triglyceride count, the more effective are these TG lowering medications, the omega-3s.
Right. Okay. And that's interesting because when I think about like Amarin and how they still don't really know the mechanism of what improves the cardiovascular outcomes, and they talk about how reducing triglycerides is part of it, but there is this kind of open question on whether or not there is something else going on here. And to see these profound effects with CaPre is interesting and unique in that we don't see the LDL lowering effects of Visipa, but we do see it here. So it is tough to know whether or not that's going to have a more profound effect or not. And even I guess what we're gonna find out about the Epanova trial, the strength trial of AstraZeneca's that comes out, is we should get some insight into that. But can you give us a little color on what you're expecting from the strength trial?
Right. So we've talked to a number of members of the industry, both in the practitioner side and in the corporate side, and we think the consensus is that there's a high likelihood of success with strength. In other words, a mixed EPA DHA formulation, Epanova, which is AstraZeneca's drug, has a potential to show CV outcome benefits the same way Reducit showed those benefits for Amarin's Vascepa.
Mm-hmm.
And what that will do, in our opinion, is it will show that omega-3's CV outcomes benefit is a class effect, not something that's purely related just to the pure EPA medicine, Vascepa. And so if you can show that there's multiple medicines that are omega-3s that have different compositions, and they all have these CV outcomes benefits, then it should cast a halo effect on some of these smaller companies who haven't performed their own outcomes trials, which are very large, require thousands of patients, many years, and millions of dollars of investment. There could be this halo effect where companies like Acasti could benefit, and doctors realize that all the omega-3s have this CV outcomes benefit potentially.
Yeah, and that's what I would expect if there was a positive strength trial. Now, I am curious on whether or not the increases in LDL are going to have a role in the outcome of the strength trial, but I think the real Capri, or the real Acasti catalyst, is going to be for their Trilogy 1 and Trilogy 2, like you mentioned. That's going to come out in December and January. So I did want to move to give like a kind of a breakdown of what Acasti's at right now. So they closed on Friday at $217 a share, which puts their market cap at $185 million. And if you compare that market cap to Amarin or AstraZeneca right now, it is orders of magnitude smaller. So in terms of growth potential, I think it's obviously there. I see here you guys have a buy rating for it and a price target of $3. I don't know if you want to go through the kinds of the way you come up with a model for seeing or for coming up with that price target, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So we initially launched on coverage of Acasti. That was on July 9th, $3 price target. Stock was about $1.45 at the time. Now, as you mentioned, it's over $2. So, it's nice to have a winner. But there could be a lot more room to go. Obviously, we have a $3 price target, and we think we're the street low at that. There could be additional upside. Obviously, getting through these trilogy trials with a successful top line showing TG lowering of 20% in the patient population would we think would be a re-rating catalyst. It's not the only one, but as you mentioned, it's probably one of the major ones. So how do we come up with a $3 price target? We use a discounted cash flow analysis, and we estimate what the omega-3 market could be in terms of total sales for the whole industry, and we do that out for about 10 years. And then we estimate a share that Acasti could capture based on its fasting bioavailability and its trifecta effect. We handicap that, obviously, because we haven't come through the phase 3 trial yet. And then we discount all those cash flows back, put an exit multiple, which we double discount for added conservatism, and we end up with this $3 price target.
Okay. All right. Interesting. I think that provides a lot of color for people who are trying to do this on their own. Now, I did want to make a note here that Capri is actually krill oil, which is different than Vascepa, and krill is what? It's like a crustacean, so it's also a type of ocean creature.
That's right. It's bottom of the food chain, little crustacean, and that's an interesting point because people can get omega-3s from a variety of dietary sources. I mean, these things are found throughout nature, but the problem is the therapeutic quantities that we've discussed, the 2 grams or 4 grams, you just can't get that from eating. You'd have to eat tons and tons of fish, like more than you'd ever want, to even possibly come close to therapeutic quantities. So that's one of the reasons why a prescription omega-3 is important and makes sense. And also now that you have a reimbursement, it's actually there's really not a benefit to buying over-the-counter fish oil, which you also don't exactly know what you're getting, and they even have triglycerides within the formulation. So it's important to note that there's a clear benefit to having a prescription omega-3.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that everybody can agree on, and I'm sure there's different opinions about all of these different companies and combinations, is that the over-the-shelf omega-3s are really, you're not doing yourself any favors by buying those. So I think before we sign off, I did want to go through the upcoming catalysts for the 3 big companies, I guess, that we've been talking about today. And the first being Acasti, with the top-line data for Trilogy 1 and Trilogy 2 coming in December 2019 and January 2020. And these are the phase 3 trials with the 4 grams of their Capri formulation. AstraZeneca's strength trial results should be coming out in October 2020. And of course, they're a gigantic company, so I wouldn't buy AstraZeneca in anticipation that this is going to move it too much, but it is interesting to note. And then Amarin, of course, with their Vasipa, they have an advisory committee on the 19th of November, and this is for the supplemental NDA for the expansion of the label that currently exists. And they're also doing presentations at the AHA on November 16th to the 18th, with the PDUFA date supposedly coming on the 28th of December, but I have a feeling that might change, but maybe not. So I think there's further catalysts coming up for Acasti. Is that right, Nathan?
Yeah, that's right. And you've been covering one of the big ones in prior podcasts, and today you mentioned it, the AdCom for Vasipa, where there'll be a discussion about whether to expand the label for CV outcomes benefit, not just triglyceride lowering. Obviously, that's huge for the whole space. I think that could further drive adoption. So that's going to cast a beneficial effect. I would expect that if that is positive, then Acasti and others could trade higher in sympathy with that news. We've conducted channel checks, and we believe that the consensus is that because of Reducit's strong data, there's a very high likelihood that they do get the expanded label. So that's going to be important for the space. And then when you look at the timeline for Acasti, obviously you get Trilogy 1 and 2 in December and January. And then we'll expect to get a full unveiling of data for Trilogy trial results in March and April, which could have some of those secondary benefits from the trial. Then you could have potentially a NDA filing in the third quarter next year. And then in 2021 is when we expect a potential approval and launch of Capri into the market.
Right. Okay, yeah, so anticipating maybe an early review by the FDA. Interesting, great. That's helpful to know. And I think one of the things that people are going to be looking for is that expanded data set where we see the LDL changes and the HDL changes. But yeah, that's great. And I definitely want to thank you for coming on and talking about Acasti for us. I think the space is very interesting, and it's only gonna get bigger. If you think about how statins really blew up in the 80s and 90s, I think omega-3s are probably going to follow a similar trajectory. I don't know if you've any comments on that.
Yeah, I think is the case that the statins provide a great example of what a CV medicines can look like. It's more and more were introduced and started garnering market share even before their own outcomes trials were complete.
Yeah.
People viewed the statin benefits on LDL as a class effect. So that's what we're expecting could be the case for Acasti and omega-3 space. So it's worth seeing that there were multiple statins. They did billions of dollars of sales.
Yeah.
And omega-3s could follow in that path. And because the price points are low, certainly compared to other categories of therapeutics, we like to think this is a medicine that you actually can take. It can benefit millions of patients.
Yeah, I agree. And if you think, I'm thinking about like PCSK9 inhibitors that had such a high price tag that it was tough for them to get a lot of traction in the market, even though there was so much excitement about them when they came out. But the omega-3s are unique in that they have this major effect, and they're pretty cost effective. So it's a high likelihood that they're going to get coverage from payers. So I think that's good too. But yeah, so Nathan, if you want to tell people where they can get more information from Aegis and your group in particular.
Absolutely. So Aegis Capital can be found online, and there you can find all the information and how to contact us. And we do have over 400 wealth managers and brokers on the platform, so there's always going to be someone there to accommodate investors' needs.
Okay, great. And yeah, and I think they should definitely, when they go to Aegis, the website, they can look you up and see all the companies that you cover, because you obviously do a lot more than just Acasti.
That's right. We have coverage, as you mentioned earlier, across a number of therapeutic categories, including oncology, animal health, medical device, rehab and PT, and constantly looking for new and interesting potential investments.
Okay, great. Well, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. So thanks again, Nathan, for coming on. I do appreciate it. And yeah, I hope this gave everybody a decent overview of another side of the omega-3 space. So thanks again, everybody. And please hit the like or subscribe button. I would appreciate that. Also, leave me a review at iTunes or wherever you listen, and that would be great. And with that, we'll see you next time. Now, before I let you go, I did want to mention that if you're listening only to this podcast, to go to the YouTube channel and go to this video in particular and go right to the end. And here you'll be able to see the analyst disclosures that Nathan provided me to share with everyone. And in this way, you'll get an idea of the relationship that Aegis does have with Acasti Pharma. And in this way, you can keep that in mind before you make any investing decision. And with that, I'll officially let you go this time. Have a good day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.